Hey you guys, hello and welcome. I hope everyone's doing really well. I'm really digging the lighting in this room, so I think I'm gonna keep filming here. I think that with the direct light I look a little bit more like I actually sleep. My under eye bags are pretty intense some days. Anyways, so this over here is the Alocasia Yucutan Princess, specifically the dark form. I'm not sure if it's actually like a different subhybrid, the dark one, but that's how it was sold to me, and it does really appear to be quite a bit darker than the regular one. It has this really like it's almost kind of platinumy green, almost with a purple undertone, silvery gray leaf. Like it's just such a unique color. I really hope that shows on camera. It's just so unique. And then the bottom sides of the leaves are a little bit more purple. They have this really striking purple venation to them. And almost like the Alocasia zebrina, it has this really nice mottled appearance on its petioles. So this over here is a hybrid. It's a natural, sorry, not a hybrid, it's a natural mutation of the Alocasia Sarawakensis, which is native to Sarawak, which is a state in Malaysia on the northern stretches of the island of Borneo. Although it also naturally occurs in Sabah, which is to the northeast, also in Malaysia on the island of Borneo. And it also lives in Brunei, parts of Kalimantan, and even parts of Sumatra into Indonesian territory. So alocasia, I'm not generally speaking the biggest fan of alocasias. I think a lot of them are really overrated, to be honest. I think like the dragon scale, for example, I think they're very overpriced and hyped. However, this one over here I think really deserves its hype. I think it's just a really stately, unique plant, and it just has this really interesting midrib to the leaf when it comes out. It's so cool. But allocations are not for everyone because they're kind of hard to propagate for one. For two, they need really high light. You wouldn't think that they need very high light because of the dark pigmentation of the leaves, but they actually do thrive in exceptionally bright locations. And they sort of sprout from a very central growing point. The meristem is very close to the center of the cluster of stems, which also makes them really hard to divide. And if you screw up your newest leaf, it sort of sucks out the energy from the plant, and it's really hard to get a good new leaf coming out. And when they get a new leaf, they tend to, this is just the order of how they grow. When you get a new leaf, an old leaf tends to die, and then you're usually left with about 3 to 5, maybe 6 leaves on at a time. So the plant never really gets too big in appearance. Unless it's exceptionally mature, then you're going to get little offshoots and pups. So this plant over here regenerates from a bulb. I think it looks really similar to like a gloxinia or like a hardy begonia bulb. It's kind of, or like a taro root. Actually, this plant is very closely related to taro. Um, that's the Colocasia esculenta. This here is an Alocasia Sarawakensis. So they're two very similar genuses. Basically, the Colocasia has a downward reflexing, more what's the word I'm looking for? Chordate shaped leaf, and they're a little bit more matte, a little bit less venation, and they're usually edible. However, the alocasias usually have more of a spear shape or a sagittate shaped leaf, and they have a lot of calcium oxalates in them, which makes this plant quite toxic. 10 out of 10, highly recommend you guys don't eat this plant. I really recommend, especially the stems. Um, some alocasias are edible, but please just don't do your own experimentation on these because they can cause really bad swelling of your pharynx and your vocal passages, and kind of ultimately lead in death, like suffocation. So please just don't eat this plant. It's not very good around your pets either. So, yeah, most allocations are native to the Philippines. This one here is just more so centered on the island of Borneo. So yeah, what should I talk about this plant now? Um, so I don't know why they call it the Yucatan Princess, because it's not actually native to Yucatan, the Yucatan Peninsula in southern Mexico. I think that's just the people that commercially mass-produced it first decided to give it that name, because it has a really tropical appeal to it. Yeah, so this is a pretty long-lived plant. It's in the Araceae family. What else should I say about it? Sorry, my hand's getting a little tired holding the camera. Light. Okay, yeah, light. This plant here likes really intense, borderline direct, but slightly diffused light, almost to the point where you think you're gonna scorch the leaves off. They tend to really do well in that. This is a plant that really struggles in shade. It'll go yellow on you. It'll drop its leaves. It won't look pretty. So lots of light. Another thing I want to say is really good drainage. You want to make sure that this plant has a very airy mix. I'm growing mine in cocoa coir. You want to make sure that this plant goes really dry between waterings. I know a lot of people say keep the soil evenly moist for a while, but in my personal experience, I don't know if it's just because the level of light I give it, I find that it's very susceptible to root rot if you overwater it. Doesn't seem too sensitive to lots of chlorine in your tap water, so I don't use distilled water. I just use regular tap water for this one. Excuse me. It likes a lot of heat. I think a good target is about 21 degrees Celsius. Sorry, I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but 21 degrees Celsius is a pretty good target temperature for this plant. Likes really good ambient humidity. I think 80% pushing even upwards to 90% ambient relative humidity is perfect for this plant. Yeah, and if you really want those veins to be more pronounced, I recommend misting the leaves. These leaves are, I'm not even joking, they're a dust magnet. Like, even mention dust and these leaves get dusty. So regular cleaning just aids in photosynthesis, keeps them clean. Mature height of this plant, I would say, is about 2 feet. Just from what I've seen inside, about 3.5 feet in the wild. Very hard to replicate, perfect conditions for indoors. Mature spread is also about 2-3 feet, sometimes a little bit bigger. But these leaves can really beef up. They can be like upwards of 25 centimeters long. So it just depends on the quality of the care of your plant and how happy it is with you. Best way to propagate this is by getting little off pups and little offshoots from the base when they emerge. Best time to do that, I think, is September, just before this plant goes into dormancy. You can also propagate them via the tiny little bulbs that appear in clumps at the bottom. And they're pretty efficient that way. Excuse me, very hard to sort of divide, especially if you only have one point coming out of the crown. What else should I say? It does have this, it has a spadix inflorescent. It looks very similar to the inflorescence of the Monstera deliciosa. In the wild, it attracts all sorts of different insects, namely coleopterans, so beetles. It's not very fragrant from what I've heard. And, oh yeah, another thing I really want to talk about this plant, and sorry, I know I'm getting a little bit long-winded, so please bear with me, is it goes under a period of dormancy. So expect for this plant, usually around October, November, where I live, Southern Hemisphere, I want to say more so March, April. This plant will lose the majority of its leaves if you're not careful. It's just going into a dormant state. You'll just notice a little bit of a loss of vigor. You'll notice that it stops growing new leaves. It'll probably go a little bit orangey, bronzy yellow in color. And as long as it doesn't go down to mush, right down to the bottom, and you have a little bit of a stalk, you should be fine. It just goes through a natural dormant period for about 8 weeks in the year. Sometimes you might not even lose a single leaf if this plant is really happy and just keep it perennially through the year. But just keep in mind, it does undergo dormancy, so don't be discouraged by it if it loses almost all of its leaves in the winter. Yeah, so some takeaways from this video: it likes really high light, really good drainage. It likes heat. Don't let it cool down too much. It undergoes dormancy. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the easiest to take care of, 10 being the hardest, in my experience, I'm going to put this plant at like a 2 or a 3. It's really easy to take care of when you get it right, and if you have the light to give it. Yeah. Yeah, so I have many other videos planned, lots of tropical plants. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to be getting outside as the weather starts clearing up a little bit, hopefully doing some more outdoorsy edible plant stuff. Yeah, so this plant's really not edible. Just wanted, insanely wanted to drill that idea in your guys' head. Not edible, very toxic. Yeah, have a really wonderful day, you guys. Thank you for watching. Thanks for bearing with me. This was a longer video. And I wish you guys all the best in your lives. I wish you guys success, and yeah, be kind to people. So yeah, Alocasia Yucutan Princess, dark form.